Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. So that's the theory. The brain is a computer with a bottleneck, working memory, and a massive storage vault, long-term memory. How do we use this to teach fourth graders or college students? Cognitivist teaching is all about strategies. It's not about discovering your own truth. That's constructivism. Or drilling until you drop. That's behaviorism. It's about organizing information so the brain can process it efficiently. Number 1, chunking. Since working memory is tiny, we have to hack it. The best hack is chunking. If I give you the letters FBITWA, CIA, IBM, that is 12 items. Your brain will fail to hold them. But if I group them into FBI, TWA, CIA, IBM, that is now only 4 items. It's the same amount of information, but it takes up less slots on the workbench. Cognitivist teachers are masters of chunking. They don't teach the whole periodic table at once. They break it down into rows or families. They organize a lecture into 3 main points. They know that if they dump a solid hour of unstructured information on students, learning stops after about 10 minutes. Number 2, attention getters, the sensory hook. You have to beat the filter. Cognitivist teachers start lessons with something to grab the sensory register. Watch this explosion. Here is a picture of something impossible. Imagine you just won $1 million. They use bold fonts, highlighting, and voice modulation, not just to be entertaining, but to signal to the brain, process this part. Number 3, mnemonics and dual coding. How do you ensure data gets from working memory to long-term memory? You give the brain a hook. Mnemonics are pure cognitivism. PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, is a tool to compress a complex set of rules into a single retrieval queue. Dual coding is another massive concept. The researcher Alan Pivio discovered that the brain processes images and text in 2 separate channels. If you talked about a circle, verbal channel, and show a picture of a circle, visual channel, you have created 2 paths into the memory. The student is twice as likely to remember it. This is why PowerPoint, when used well, works. It's why diagrams are better than text-heavy textbooks. Number 4, elaborative rehearsal. Behaviorists liked rote rehearsal, just repeating cat, gato, over and over. Cognitivists know that this is a weak way to store data. It creates a very thin, fragile file. They prefer elaborative rehearsal. This means doing something meaningful with the information. Don't just define the word. Use it in a sentence about your own life. Don't just memorize the date of the battle. Explain why the general lost. Don't just read the formula. Explain it to a partner. When you elaborate, you are weaving the new information into your existing web of schemas. You are velcroing the new fact to 10 old facts. This makes it sticky. If cognitivism has a patron saint of classroom instruction, it is Robert Gagne. In the 1960s, while serving as an educational psychologist for the military, Gagne developed a framework that is still the gold standard for instructional design. He called it the 9 events of instruction. Gagne argued that for learning to happen efficiently, a lesson needs to follow the natural processing of the brain. You can't just walk in and start talking. You have to prep the computer. 1. Gain attention. Wake up the sensory register. Everyone look at this. 2. Inform learners of objectives. Set up the expectation. Today, we are going to learn how to calculate area. This helps the student call up the right folders in their brain to get ready. 3. Stimulate recall of prior learning. Retrieve old schemas. Remember how we learned about length and width yesterday? This pulls the necessary background info into working memory so we can attach new info to it. 4. Present the content. Input. This is the lecture, the video, or the reading. It must be chunked and organized. 5. Provide learning guidance. Encoding support. This is where the teacher gives examples, non-examples, and mnemonics to help store the info. 6. Elicit performance. Practice. Now you try one. This forces the brain to practice the retrieval path. 7. Provide feedback. Correction. Not quite, you forgot to carry the 1. This debugs the mental file before it solidifies. 8. Assess performance. The test. Verifying the data is stored. 9. Enhance retention and transfer. Application. How would you use this to measure your bedroom carpet? This generalizes the skill so it isn't just stuck in math class mode. If you look at almost any effective corporate training or well-planned lesson today, it follows these 9 steps. It is a systematic, logical, engineering approach to teaching. As cognitivism matured, researchers realized something else. The best learners weren't just good at processing information, they were good at watching themselves process information. This is metacognition. Metacognition is the brain's ability to monitor its own performance. It's the little voice in your head that says, I read that paragraph, but I have no idea what it meant. I better read it again. I always forget definitions, so I better make flashcards for this part. I'm getting distracted. I need to put my phone away. Poor learners often lack metacognition. They read a textbook chapter while watching TV, close the book, and think, okay, I studied. They have no internal gauge to tell them that nothing actually stuck. A cognitivist teacher spends a lot of time teaching students how to learn. They model these thoughts. They might say, I'm looking at this problem and I feel stuck. What strategy should I use? They force students to reflect on their own thinking. Why did you choose that answer? How confident are you? By building metacognition, we are essentially upgrading the computer's operating system. We are making the learner more autonomous and efficient. To truly understand the flavor of cognitivism, it helps to put it next to its rivals. Cognitivism versus behaviorism. Behaviorism is about training. It works great for dogs in simple tasks, multiplication tables. It treats the student as passive. Cognitivism is about thinking. It treats the student as active. The behaviorist asks, did you get the right answer? The cognitivist asks, how did you figure that out? Cognitivism versus constructivism. This is the trickier split. Both agree that learning is internal and mental, but constructivism, Piaget, Vygotsky, is much more loose. Constructivists believe every student builds their own unique reality based on their experiences. They love discovery learning and messy group projects. Cognitivists are more structured. They believe there is an objective reality and an efficient way to process it. They are skeptical of pure discovery learning because it causes too much cognitive load. A cognitivist says, why let the student struggle to discover the formula for an hour? That wastes working memory. Just teach them the formula clearly, then let them practice using it. Cognitivism is the pragmatic middle ground. It respects the mind, but it also respects structure, efficiency, and the science of memory. For all its success, cognitivism has its critics. The biggest criticism comes from the very metaphor it uses. Is the brain really just a computer? Critics argue that comparing a human being to a hard drive is reductive. It ignores the emotional, social, and physical reality of being a person. Emotion. Cognitivism often talks about learning as a cold, logical process. But we know that we learn better when we feel safe or excited or loved. If a student is hungry or traumatized, their information processing model shuts down, not because of a software glitch, but because of survival instincts. Embodiment. We don't just think with our brains, we think with our bodies. A dancer learns by moving. An artist learns by touching. Cognitivism can sometimes be too in the head and ignore the physical act of doing. Social context. Cognitivism focuses heavily on the individual's brain, but as the social constructivists point out, we learn from people. The computer is never isolated, it is networked. However, modern cognitivism is adapting. Social cognitivism, championed by Albert Bandura, brings the social element back in, acknowledging that we learn by observing others. And hot cognition is a new field studying how emotion impacts memory storage. Despite the critiques, cognitivism is arguably the dominant force in education today. If you walk into a school and see a teacher using a graphic organizer, concept map to help students arrange their thoughts, that's cognitivism. If you see a teacher breaking a complex project into small, manageable milestones, that's cognitivism. If you see a teacher explicitly teaching study skills and memory tricks, that's cognitivism. Cognitivism gave educators a vocabulary to talk about the invisible. It legitimized the study of the mind. It moved us away from the crude carrot and stick of behaviorism and gave us the respect of being complex, thinking beings. It taught us that teaching isn't just about presenting information. It's about design. It's about designing the lesson to fit the architecture of the human mind. It acknowledges that the brain is a magnificent, powerful, but limited machine, and that our job as educators is to help that machine run as smoothly as possible. We are not just training animals. We are programming the most sophisticated computer in the universe. And thanks to Cognitivism, we finally have the manual.